two boats tried to cross almost a week ago. We hit
Mm.
them with a mortar. One made it home, the other one made it 500 meters and sank. That's been my only experience with Russians in 2 weeks back has been on a drone screen.
Hello and welcome to Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot. And this time we're catching up with Brandon Mitchell, a combat medic in Ukraine. Brandon, who's Canadian, served 4 years in the British Army and went out to Ukraine when Russia launched its full-out invasion in 2022. We last saw Brandon when he was on a brief trip to the UK, and he joins us now from Zaporizhia. Brandon, great to see you again. How are you?
I'm quite well. It's a real privilege to speak to you again, Kate.
So you're in Zaporizhia. Can you just tell me what you've been doing exactly recently?
Well, I went home to sort out some personal issues, and I've done many interviews, such as yourself, and spent a lot of time with individuals and organizations, grassroots organizations that aid us here in Ukraine. Met with people in person. They sent me back with a truck and a load of supplies to donate to our battalion. So that was very nice. I've been back now 2 weeks. Um, a brief bit of time in Kiev, and I've actually spent a week, not entirely, but about half of a week on the lines in Kherson, uh, on the water, so to speak. I've done a week in Kherson, and now I'm delivering supplies. Tomorrow, from Zaporizhia city to Orkhiv, and then back to Donbass.
So you're sitting in your car now. What have
Yes.
you got exactly with you? And what kind of vehicle?
Um, well, this is my truck that I've always had, since it was actually donated to me by an American of when he seen my original truck was blowing up. This is quite sentimental to me. So I try to use this all the time. I have a lot of things here. For example, this is called a quick clot, or a British brand would be called a Celox, and they basically stop the bleeding. It's a gauze with a hemostatic agent, and people buy these for us all the time. What Ukraine can't supply. Um, the price of these went from $30 at the beginning of the war. They're now at about 100.
Wow.
I was given no less than 600 of these. Say for example, tourniquets, different brands they provide. Um, I'd say no less than 400 tourniquets I came back with, just to name a few things. That's not only on the medical supply. I fundraise for other things myself that I've come with.
Can you describe what the conditions are like where you are? How kinetic is it where you're working at the moment?
Well, the only frontline experience I have now being back is in Kherson, and I don't want to discount the suffering, but it was very calm. Um, and why I say it's calm, I went to bring supplies and to teach. I'm doing some teaching now as well. Um, Recently, there's been some successes in Kherson where the mortars have been pushed back, the Russian mortars. So now we're only essentially in artillery range, which is obviously much longer. And that, like, um, from all the Ukrainians, and I went to visit British boys in the unit. They said it's simply taken the pressure off. So with a few gains, as dangerous as Kherson is, it's become significantly safer for day-to-day life, just over a matter of 2 weeks.
And you
Um,
mentioned Orkhiv. How is it there?
I can't tell you until I get there tomorrow.
Have
Um,
you not heard anything before going about what to expect?
well, I can only tell you anecdotes. I I think it's a bit concerning that my friend I'm delivering. I fundraise for night vision binoculars, so the evacuation teams can work at night. His team, their leave was cancelled early. They had to come back a week early. So purely on an anecdotal level, perhaps things are heating up.
Have you been hearing much about casualties? Have you noticed a big difference since you were last talking to us?
Um, on the from most people that I talk to, Donbass seems to be a constant. But most of the struggles, if I'm honest, from what I hear, have been on the Zaporizhia line, which is so widespread. Um, I don't want to say we became complacent, but before the counteroffensive and last summer, it was very calm there. I
Mm.
worked in a med point for the First Armored Brigade, and from June on last year, it became very, very, very. Um, it it was essentially the calmest place of the war, and now it is not.
So
So,
you've noticed a huge change, presumably, since you last talked to us in terms of how much you're needing the urgency for your work.
well, this is the thing. We're all trying to do the best we can. I will return to my role on October 1st. I will go back on medical rotation,
Mhm.
but now more or less I'm free to go around and deliver supplies that I fundraised with through my own YouTube and my own Instagram. Not to mention all the things like the medical supplies that have been donated outright uh, by Swedish and German organizations that help us. So I'm essentially I'm a glorified delivery boy between Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Donbass. But I will go back on October 1st is when I'm due to start in Kherson.
So your delivery that you're going to make when you head to Kyiv tomorrow, can you just, I
Mhm.
mean, are you on your own? Are you with I mean, how much are you taking and who are you taking it to exactly?
So tomorrow, I have these are called PSV 14. They're night vision binoculars. They attach to your helmet, and you can
Mm,
drive in the dark. You can walk in the dark. Um, I fundraise for those. Those are harder to get. They'll sometimes take a couple weeks for delivery. Two of them were about $6,000. Um, those medics, I've been in that situation, so I kind of prioritize them because I'm the one fundraising. I can kind of pick favorites, for lack of a better term. Um, Quite often, depending on the terrain, if it's open ground, they're not risking their vehicles. If a casualty is relatively stable, they can and they can be quite horrendously wounded, but stable is they're not getting worse. Some of those guys are forced to walk sometimes 2 kilometers and carry them out on a soft stretcher. So I
mm,
understand that situation. And that's decided by the commanders, but also by them. Um, Quite often, we're not risk some of our best Western aid, like the M113 armored carriers. Um, we tend not to risk them when we don't have to, unless it's necessary, unless it's time. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, yeah.
uh, I don't want to sound cruel here, but with a Humvee, and this is for medical evacuation. I've been there in the past. Will we send the crappy Ukrainian ambulance and two medics, or will we send the Humvee? If we lose the two medics, better we not lose the Humvee. Um, but for these guys, I just think it's really important because I've worked in those situations in Avdiivka where you kind of have to leapfrog. Um, so I'm quite fond of one of them in particular.
So how did it get decided exactly where you're going and how much exactly you're taking?
Oh, well, thanks to a Swedish organization that provides a lot of our medical aid, the tactical medicine supplies. That's what you use before hospital. Um, I'm lucky enough to have. Well, I came back with the equivalent of about 30,000 euros worth. Um, I'll bring that to everywhere I go, and as they need, I have no plan. If you need 20 tourniquets, if you need 30 tourniquets, but specific things like for example, the other day I was able to buy a pair of binoculars for
Mm.
about a specific pair, but a good pair. Someone needs that. That has a specific home. The radio batteries, the night vision, they all have specific homes. But with the medical supplies, um, it you never know what you're going to give out. This has actually been going on in Donbass. It's the most sophisticated because Ukrainians have been doing this. As I learned, this was quite inspiring to me. They've been doing this since 2014.
Mm.
Like I know a woman with a 7-year old. Her the grandmother takes care of. She does a week in Donbass and goes home for a week. But
Mm.
she has relationships with all the humanitarian organizations, the police, the Donbass administration. So that's how a lot of this is happening. And I'll tell you, it's as simple as once you help one soldier, the Ukrainian boys are very shy to ask for help. Like I don't deal in socks. I fundraise for because I have a very successful platform relatively. I try to buy the expensive things. Um, but 500 pairs of merino wool socks, the boys are shy to ask for them, but the girls are quite effective of talking to them about stuff like that. Like you'd like some thermal underwear, you'd like extra boots. That's how
Are you,
all that's happening.
have you got a sense, Brandon, how what you're doing is fitting into the kind of more? I mean, it sounds like it's a network of people who are used to dealing what is needed in this way, and that it's a kind of on a voluntary basis. How does that
Yes.
complement? How much is it needed? How much of a difference is it making to what the more official efforts that are going on?
Well, every soldier gets issued uniforms and kit and boots, but there's not enough to go around. I know guys that have lost their boots that we've had as casualties, say for example, and they would be out for 5 days, and then they would go back to the line. They would need a new pair of boots. Maybe you've seen Ukrainian soldiers wearing trainers. Some of them tend to do that at a choice in the summer.
Mm.
Um, so a lot of these things are coming, but through the goodwill of people, um, I get a sense, uh, because I read all the comments on my social media, and when people donate money, helping the Ukrainians through a non-official way where they can see accountability in social media and faces.
Mm.
Um, this is not Desert Storm SAS with blacked out faces. These are real human beings. um, I really get a sense that this gives people a sense of agency, if you will. Like uh, the last few years prior to the war were very hard on people with government policies. I'm not taking an opinion, but I really believe people who support us, this has given them a sense of agency and purpose again, and from all walks of life.
And how are the Ukrainian soldiers and the civilians in terms of morale at the moment, the people you're coming across?
Well, a friend of mine died recently, that I knew, and it was quite surreal. He wasn't a close friend, but his funeral was in Kiev. I wasn't there. I was in Kherson, but one of my friends who's a Ukrainian volunteer, who's always helping the units. His specialty is IT. The nerds are really good here. They do everything, our drones, our radios. He went to the funeral with the commander, and they only had a time slot for the funeral for about 40 minutes, an hour, and then there would be another funeral and the grave was dug. Can you imagine that?
Mm.
Um, but this commander, who I know quite well, um, it was very surreal for him to be in Kiev, and then afterwards they all went to eat. They had lunch, probably about 20 of them, and it was in Podil, which is it's kind of like the Islington. It's the hipster area. I don't know if Islington still is the hipster area of London, but um, it's in places like Kiev. There's many people doing many things, but it's like the war doesn't exist, and for some people that's hard. That's hard to accept. Um, but on that same note, life is continuing. Like everybody knows, anywhere you go, billboards, which are still the fashion in Ukraine, every second billboard is a patriotic billboard. The Slava Ukraine, as you've seen, or recruiting posters to various brigades, or even my own battalion, Hospitallers, did an advertising campaign for recruiting because if you're not mobilized, there's been people conscripted, but many Ukrainians I know. I know a young lawyer who's 25, and he's been taking first aid training. Everybody in Ukraine seems to start with first aid training by their own initiative, and there's Ukrainian and foreign groups. I have friends. I teach it in the army, closer to the front, but many of them are preparing. And people you never would have thought join the military, they're asking their friends, what is this unit like? And if I can completely honest, some of them have decided now who didn't join over the first year and a half, they're preparing to join units that they want to join, as opposed to possibly being conscripted and the choice being made for them.
So that's interesting because you know, a lot of the reports you get in this country might say, for example, that there are some people who are less willing to fight, that there have been some problems, but you're seeing the opposite, basically. I mean, for example, there have been some scandals that have been written up about evasion of going to do your military service, to go to the front line, some people getting paying for having sort of sick notes or whatever to not have to be conscripted. But you're not getting that at all. You're getting the opposite.
Uh, I'm absolutely sure what you say is true. Um, but at the same time, uh, the stories that stick out are the people. I mean, who am I? I'm a foreigner who's been here for what, 18 months, and away for a while. People ask me, how do you join our battalion, my battalion? I have Ukraine that I kind of know these people, or they message me and I said, well, this is how you join. This is what the courses are like. Um, just the other day, um, this is mind blowing. Like Armed Forces Day in the UK, where they have all the displays in all the towns, and they'll have the pop up marquees. I went to meet a YouTuber who's helped me with my own channel from Estonia, and he's coming around to fundraise for the famous Third Assault Brigade. They came over in a convoy, delivering 40 vehicles to different units, and what they had was a third assault day where they set up the assault course. They had a band, they had a stage. It was attended by thousands, and people had to register to do the obstacle course, which is a requirement of the passing the requirements for third assault. And this isn't just people getting ready to join. These are people thinking of other units. Uh, some of these people are like the CrossFit circle, so to speak. They wanted to try this, so
Mm.
they're in heavy recruiting drives right now for certain units, and I find that very interesting. I'd never seen that before. Whereas the army in the UK would just, there's a recruiting office. No, those units are actively recruiting and interacting with the public.
Mm.
Yeah.
Just wanted Brand to go back to something we talked about when we last met. You spoke
Oh,
to your encounters with an injured Russian soldier, or perhaps a mercenary, around Chasiv. Have you
mhm.
seen much of the Russians since returning, and are there any signs of change in the men Putin is sending to the front?
I I I'll only talk about what I know about an experience, and from Kherson, I've only seen them through a thermal image on the Mavic 3 drone,
Hmm.
and they were trying to come to our side, and through quick action, we hit them with a two boats tried to cross almost a week ago. We hit
Hmm.
them with a mortar. One made it home, the other one made it 500 meters and sank. That's been my only experience with Russians in 2 weeks back has has been on a drone screen. I went to meet a man who builds drones. This was my third day back in Ukraine. This was somewhere between Lviv and Kiev, um, and this man not only builds drones, he builds anti-drone guns. Okay, they work by a power frequency to freeze the drones. We're forced to buy these from other countries for 10, 15,000 euros. Um, for $2,800, I think was the equivalent. I was able to purchase a drone gun from him. I paid him, and in about 5 days we had delivery. That was my purpose above all for going to Kherson. I purchased a drone gun to shoot them down and block them, and I purchased something called an FPV drone that was produced in Ukraine. Yes, and I went out onto the positions for everything. So in turn, I can tell my friends in other areas exactly how everything is working.
So from your experience then, I mean, it seems like you got your finger in so many pies in terms of equipment, medical supplies, etc. What do you think is needed most? Is it possible to say?
Well, I think I
I mean,
listened to
more on the
Mr.
granular
Zelensky.
level, obviously, rather than the kind of the big equipment level, if you see what I mean.
I think we need to be honest with you, above all, I think we need more of those HIMARS. From my own personal experience with HIMARS, um, I don't like to talk grand scale, but I listened to Mr. Zelensky talk the other day to The Economist, um, and he admits he fears that maybe we'll lose certain support from certain countries,
Mm.
and he could make things happen now, and he could take ground, but at what cost? Because these are real lives, there's a constant narrative that Ukraine is always winning, that Russia is stupid, if I can say so. I see this narrative pushed out, but it's still the cost of um, real men that should go home. We
That is,
need more. We need more of that. We need more of the HIMARS.
it's interesting because you know, it's really important to keep reminding us that, you know, this is about people, that you know, you can talk about all the strategic and the things, the equipment that's needed, etc. But on the ground, you're seeing the effect of it. You're seeing the people. Is there any particular person who you've come across, who you've treated as a medic? Is there anyone that really sticks out in your mind?
Earlier on, if I'm completely honest, I'm a bit desensitized to it now, and sometimes we even make jokes amongst each other, like that would probably be a bit cringy.
Gallows humor, right?
Um, yeah, yeah. Um, but I remember early on, women, civilians. Uh, one woman would have been about 50 years old, and that was when I worked in hospital before I even went to frontline duty. My first month, um, to hold her hand for a surgeon while he tries to remove shrapnel out of it, and she had that while she was conscious. Well, she was conscious. If I can be honest with you, I think it's the civilians, and I think it's the women. Um, but I've completely honest. I've only had 4 female casualties ever, so I guess that's something to be grateful for.
And Brendan,
Yeah.
we know you've got a trip to make tomorrow to
Yes.
Kyiv. Can you just tell me what have you got ahead of you in the next coming weeks exactly, and what are your hopes?
Well, it's I guess to take advantage of every opportunity. Um, so I'm really excited that it might sound like nothing to you, um, but because we have a lot of people that help us overseas. So, for example, from the UK, we source all our radios.
Mm,
Um, and these things, due to the chip crisis, I've become quite. I know all about the chip crisis because, like these batteries, it was over £10,000 we spent probably about 3 months ago, but we
mm,
finally took delivery about 4 days ago. It used to be you couldn't get the radios. Now you couldn't get spare batteries. Things change in the supply chain, shock. But I'm personally as uninspiring to others. 130 batteries, 70 batteries to 28 Brigade tomorrow because they have our radios. If you have extra batteries, you can stay in a position for a long time, not having to send a runner. Do you know we still use runners sometimes in Ukraine? Like it sounds a bit World War One,
mm.
um, but I've seen how these save lives. But I didn't know that before I came here. Um, I since I've met you, these are supporters we have all around the world. I've done a medical course,
Mm,
and I've in Florida a tactical medicine course, which is up to date to the new American guidelines. And I've done a shooting course in Texas, and that was all paid for by Ukraine supporters. One of them is an American veteran, and he's
mm.
also a Ukraine veteran from the Kharkiv offensive. Um, he taught me everything. I now instruct people how to use thermal vision, and there's quite a process. It's very easy to use, but it's easier with a laptop. Um, So I have to go around and deliver these things. Um,
So
and I
that's
have
the
to
next few
train
weeks, is
people.
it, right?
That's until October 1st. Um, but also, if I can be honest with you, we're doing more interviews because and more soldiers, not only with my social media, like the YouTubes, pe people want to talk to the Ukrainians. I'm going to do an interview with a Belarusian volunteer who's getting one of these thermal scopes. He's been here since 2017.
Mm.
You know, not a lot of people know that we have a large amount of Belarusians that have come since this war and since the old war. Um, so that's something, you know.
And then you're
And when
going back
they
to your being a medic after that.
then I'll go back for October 1st. So we'll probably leave a couple days before, and then we work on normal positions.
And you're going
Um,
where? Or can you say that without
yeah,
putting yourself at risk?
no, no, it's fine. I'm sure Putin will have a lot more to worry about than just me in Kherson. Um, but yeah, I'll go back to medical rotation, and each shift can be anywhere from 24 to possibly 48 hours.
So
Um,
Brandon, where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself a year from now? What are your
well,
hopes in terms of your involvement in Ukraine 1 year from now?
I've given a lot of thought to this lately, because being home, seeing family, seeing, eating curry, things that I didn't think were important anymore. I hope the war's over. Um, I'd like to go, if I'm honest, I'm thinking I'd like to go study. I would actually like to get my formal education as a paramedic because
Mm.
I realize, I'm not too old. I'm only 37. And I think I'm going to start doing athletic challenges, for fundraisers. I want to do those endurance challenges like the 10K race for Tesco, Cancer Research UK, but I want to do them for Ukraine. I think that's what I'll do so I don't go crazy. I think I'll become a marathon runner. So my girlfriend will get me out of the house. I'll do Ukraine fundraisers for the rebuild.
Brandon
That's
Mitchell,
it.
good for you. Thank you so much for talking to us and for your time, and good luck with the coming weeks and with all your deliveries. All the best. You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio. My thanks to Louis Sykes, our producer. To support the work of Frontline, hit the subscribe button. You can also listen to Times Radio throughout the day or read it at times.co.uk. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.